Have me here. So today, they brought me in to give you guys a quick chat about the basics of eating and training for combat applications. I'm going to do a real basic talk, and then afterwards we'll do some Q&A. I know kind of like plenty of stuff about exercise, training, nutrition, all that stuff, so if you have any questions for me, asking them would be totally cool. Sound good? All right, so I'll chat for like 20 minutes, and then we'll get into Q&A. All right, so first, before we talk about eating and training for combat, we have to ask a question of what makes a soldier, more particularly, what makes a good soldier. There are a couple of critical components. Number one is respect for the chain of command. How many of you guys, or how many movies about war and war fighting do you see that the hero denies the chain of command and does some heroic stuff by themselves and ignores commanding officer stuff? That's like every Hollywood movie about war. Okay? Is that a good idea in actual combat applications? No, that's how you get yourself killed and a bunch of other people killed, and that's how you fail a mission. So a respect for the chain of command is fundamental to being a good soldier. In addition to that, an ability to communicate well is a critical component. You have to be able to take orders well. How many of you guys are interested in becoming officers? Everybody? Okay. You have to give orders well, and you have to absorb and exchange valuable combat information, so communication is very important to a good soldier. Of course, we can't leave out expertise with weapon systems. Soldiers fight. That's what they do. That's why they're called soldiers. So you have to have expertise with your weapon system. What is the most fundamental, basic weapon system that all of us are carrying? Fists. Or open ninja claw, right? That's a joke, okay? Maybe, unless you're a ninja, then it's not, right? So fundamentally, work with your own body, right, is a big part of your weapon system, and in addition to that, expertise with a variety of weapon system you'll be bringing to the battlefield. We can't leave out this. If you have all the capability of the world, and you are not brave, and you are not willing to execute orders as instructed, you're not going to be a good soldier. So bravery, especially in battle, and the ability to execute orders are of course prerequisites for being a good soldier. But what we're going to be talking about today is that last point. Soldiers fight, they move, they're asked to actually do things, and a readiness physically for combat is essential to establish to be a good soldier. Agreed? Yeah. So, let's zoom in more, because that's what we're here to talk about. What constitutes physical readiness for combat? Fundamentally, the battlefield is a very physical place. It's probably the most physical place of all time. Right? It's a life and death place, and the better in shape you are, the more your chances are for mission completeness and for survivability. Right? If you stay in place, or if you're not good enough shape to maneuver and move quickly, you are in ever-increasing danger. If you're being pinned down to one location by enemy fire, are you in a good spot? Okay. What if you're like really breathing heavy because your weapon system weighs too much? You're supposed to run to the next position to put down cover fire for your buddies, but you can't make it because you're still out of breath. Is that a good thing? Of course not. It's a terrible thing if you stay in place, or if you lead other people to stay in place because you can't move around effectively on the battlefield. You make the situation much worse. There are a couple of critical factors that we can break this down into combat physicality. So us as sports scientists and combat scientists, we've studied this a really long time, and we figured there are a variety of factors that lead to good physical preparation for the soldier. First is speed. Speed is a critical factor. Speed allows you, for example, to transition from bounding to Overwatch and back again. How many of you guys know what bounding Overwatch is? Should be all of you. Okay, so when you're moving and maneuvering and providing cover fire or cover Overwatch for someone, and then you're moving yourself, the faster you can do that, the better. The more stealthy you remain on the battlefield, and the more effective you are. You have to be as fast as possible to potentially evade fire. If you are coming up against an enemy and they've been described to you as incredibly slow, does that make you happy or sad? Happy. right? So when they're up against you, they had better know that you're really fast. The faster you are, the worse it is for them. In order to advance, the faster you are, the better. And in order to flank effectively, speed is of critical importance. So as a human being, as a soldier, as a warfighting machine, the faster you can be on the battlefield, especially in full gear, the better you're going to be, the more effective. Secondly, we have to be concerned with maneuverability. The modern combat battlefield, is it just an open field where we meet like the British troops with their red muskets and we just like stumble over and fire? No, of course not. What is a modern battlefield looking like more and more? What locations is it?
Mountainous regions.
Say that again? Mountainous regions. What else?
Urban.
In urban environments. The worst combination being urban mountainous regions. All right? So that means you have to move under obstacles, over obstacles, around obstacles. You'll have to climb into all kinds of places. Being physically able to maneuver yourself athletically and effectively is a huge component. If you're just good at running in a straight line, you're going to find that there are not a lot of straight lines on the battlefield. Strength and power are another critical component. We combine them in this study, right? Strength and power are critical for a variety of reasons. Number one, wielding a heavy weapon system and full kit, right? If you are really fast when you are just in shorts and a t-shirt, great. What do you have to be fast with in an actual combat situation? Do you just, how many of you guys are planning on fighting wars with a gun, a t-shirt, and shorts on? Like Matt Damon style. Okay? What are you usually fighting alongside with? What do you have on you?
Rock.
Okay, you have all of your supplies. Hopefully they issued a flak jacket to you. That would be really great, right? Hopefully you keep the metal plate in there and don't do anything stupid like taking it out, right? So you're going to be weighed down, and hopefully you have an awesome weapon system, a gun with plenty of backup ammo, right? That weighs you down. Only if you're strong and if you're powerful can you continue to be fast and maneuverable with lots of gear. Does that make sense? Because if you're super quick and super light, you just don't weigh that much, we put you in with full gear, and then you have to be fast and maneuverable, and you walking around like Frankenstein, you're doing nobody any good. If you're strong and powerful, we'll talk about how to get that in a little bit, you're actually effective at all those things in full gear. In addition, we can't rule out hand-to-hand fighting with the enemy. Let me ask you guys a question. Is hand-to-hand fighting preferred? If we have a choice, do we do it? No way. What's the best kind of kill that we can have in the military?
Long distance.
Long distance. They just let the cruise missiles handle everything, okay? But it doesn't always work like that. And especially in those mountainous regions, especially in those urban environments, you will be in a situation sooner or later, or you should definitely be prepared to be in one, in which it comes down to hand-to-hand fighting. Would you want to be the stronger, more powerful person, or the weaker person in a hand-to-hand combat situation?
Stronger.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Okay, it may come to, I can be pretty politically incorrect with you guys because you are in the military. It may come down to you with a knife or a rock and somebody else with a knife and a rock. You're going to have to overpower them and kill them, right? You had better be as strong, as powerful as possible. Really, really good idea. It will happen eventually to all too many people. Lastly, endurance is what backs up all three of those other components. You have to have the endurance to be able to repeat speed, repeat maneuverability, and repeat strength and power. Does that make sense? When you are out on mission, when you're out on deployment, you're not just asked to do something like one time, and then you win the battle, and everyone has champagne, and they go home. Right? When you get deployed, let's say you leave forward operating base to go on patrol, psychologically and physically, how long should you be prepared to be out in the field of battle?
As long as possible. So.
That is a perfect answer. Up to infinity, okay? Right? So you have to be prepared to be physically and psychologically so endurant, have such good endurance mentally and physically, developed through training, of course, you don't care how long you're out there. It's raining mud. There's blood everywhere. There's body parts. You don't care. You're out there because you are a professional warfighting machine. And you wear your enemy out with how often, how quickly you can exert strength, power, maneuverability, and speed. If you have great endurance, the firefights that last the longest, they favor you the most. Is that a good position to be in? You bet. What's the bad alternative side to that? If you're like really awesome when combat starts, and 30 minutes later you're like, can we pause? Right? Can we just do that in combat, live combat? We're like, all right, fellas, everyone's tired. Let's come back tomorrow. Of course not. right? You have to be ready to go as long as possible. So endurance underlies all of those abilities. All right, so have I convinced you that physical readiness is probably pretty important for combat? Yeah, maybe, okay? Next question, how do we create physical readiness? How do we engineer ourselves to be as good of shape as possible? There are two ways, training and diet. We're gonna look at the basics of each one. Why training? Well, it's really straightforward. In training, you directly enhance all of those abilities we were just talking about. Speed, maneuverability, endurance, strength, power. You can actually train them in the gym, in all sorts of exercises, and we're going to talk about how to train them in just a second. That's fine. What about diet? That's a weird one. You don't hear that one all the time. Here's what diet can do to enhance your physical ability. So, first of all, diet can make you perform better in training. If you are eating proper nutrition, if you're taking in proper nutrition, you have more energy to give to training. How many of you guys have ever had a crappy workout because you hadn't eaten anything in way too long? Of course, if you eat properly and you fuel yourself, you have better workouts, you have better training, and because your training gets better, all those physical abilities get better as well. Eating the right foods, having the right nutrition can make you more muscular, and muscle is what gives you strength and power for potentially those hand-to-hand combat situations or for carrying a heavy weapon or whatever else you need it for. And really importantly, diet can make you leaner. Every pound of fat you don't carry on your body is more ammunition you can carry, is more gear you can carry, and or translates to more speed. If we're really over fat and really overweight, does that give us some kind of advantage in combat? Okay? Not really. The leaner we can be, the better. So let's take a look really quick at the basics of training, of what we're supposed to be training and how we're supposed to be training to be the best that we can possibly be. To be strong and powerful, weight training is critical. Yes, push-ups and pull-ups help, but at some point you actually have to use weight. Right? If I told you you had to carry a 70-pound weapon system, how many of you would consider that heavy? 70 pounds. Pretty heavy, right? But imagine if you get to a point in your weight training where you're throwing around 70-pound dumbbells like a joke. That's what you do on your light days. Then somebody gives you a 70-pound weapon system and you're like, whatever, right? It's not a big deal. The last thing you want to be is weighed down and shocked by how heavy your weapon system is. Does that make sense? So we do weight training to expose ourselves to the kinds of weights that get us so strong and powerful that nothing we see in the combat atmosphere, nothing we see in the field is really going to surprise us anymore. You have to do some form of repeat sprint training. Super, super important. Why? Because that's the nature of combat most of the time. Move, fire, maneuver, move, fire, maneuver. So if you do repeat sprint training, you develop a good deal of speed and endurance at the same time. Maneuvering drills, actually moving your body around in similar to combat situations. There are exercises you can do to do this, but the best way to do it is in gear. How many of you guys get a chance to put on full kit and go march around or do combat style drills? Yeah. How many of you think that's like super fun and the best thing ever? Of course not. It's a real huge pain in the ass. But it makes you fit to actually maneuver in full gear. If you're the most athletic person of all time in shorts and a t-shirt, oh, that's well and good. But if you can still maneuver effectively in gear, now you're a warfighter. Now you're a ready-made soldier. Underlying all of this, a good bit of distance running, a good bit of ruck marching, and calisthenics that help to develop a base level of endurance and keep your body fat levels low. That keeps you in fundamentally good shape. So yes, you will train in all of these methods, and always you will do some form of endurance to make sure your endurance recovery is high and your body fat is low. Make sense? Question?
What would you consider distance runners? Like how far?
Anything over 800 meters is technically distance running, but up to and including, 10 miles, marathon, etc. I think for combat applications, several miles at a time is probably a good idea, and you should also mix in sprint interval training, and of course long ruck marches are really essential, right? How long are some of your marches that you've done before?
12 miles.
Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah, longer the better in that case. Here's the deal, really, really big point. Intelligent training is a really, really good idea. Okay, you want to push yourself as hard as you can in training, but not so hard that you can't recover. Right? So you want to push yourself as hard as you can to the point where you're really stressing your recovery, and then you want to back off Give your body a chance to rest. That's why rest days are important. That's why having a low stress environment is important, so you can train super hard, not too hard, as hard as you can, recover, recuperate, grow, and improve. And of course, you don't want to train easier than you can. Why? Because you just won't get that good, right? So intelligent training is training that trains you harder than something that won't make you better, but not so hard that you break down, overtrain, overreach, all that other bad stuff. This point I can't emphasize too much. How do you get in good shape? You get in good shape only by being consistently in the gym, consistently hitting your runs, consistently doing everything to improve your physical fitness. You have to always train at least to some extent. Yes, there will be times where you're training a little bit less, and sometimes you're training a little bit more. But because you are preparing eventually for the possibility of war, consistency, training all the time is a really good idea because it slowly but surely builds up your physical capacity. If you disappear off the map and stop training for an entire summer, you have to rebuild for months before you get to go to a new higher level again. I'll tell you this, the top operators in the world, tier 1 folks, you guys know what that is, Delta, SEALs, people like that, there's not a time when they're not training hard. They're either training hard or they're actually forward deployed. Does that make sense? So when we talk about what is a good idea to do for workouts, how are you going to get in shape? It's not one workout. It's not one good week. It's coming back week after week, month after month. Even when you're the only person telling yourself to work out. How many of you are going to be officers eventually? Right? Hopefully all of us. When you get to be an officer, the number of people telling you what to do really reduces. Do you guys think generals tell colonels that they have to work out? No, they give orders for combat stuff. They don't tell you you have to stay in shape. So you may let yourself slack a bit because no one's yelling at you anymore. But if you want to be combat prepared, you have to always be in a position to work out. Even if you're deployed somewhere in Germany, you're working at like a military hospital, make sure you make the time to improve or at least keep your physical readiness. Does that make sense? If you get in shape once in your life, that doesn't last long. How many of you guys ever heard people brag about how good of shape they were back in high school? Like, or older people be like, back when I was your age, I was squatting elephants and stuff like that. Well, now it doesn't seem like you did much of anything. The only way you keep your abilities is by consistency. And the only way you get really, really good is by always practicing your craft. Really quick summary of diet basics, and we'll have plenty of time in Q&A to hit the specifics if you guys want. Good dieting tips to make sure you're getting the most out of your training. You want to eat 4 or 5 times a day. Eat consistently. You want to make sure that every meal you eat fundamentally starts with a protein source, be that meat of any kind, fish included, milk, eggs, or even protein powder. Almost every meal of the day, or most meals of the day, should have a good protein source that really helps you build muscle and hold on to muscle. In addition to that, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, healthy kinds of carbohydrates, fuel your workouts and help you recover. If you have a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains in your diet, you're going to be able to go train crazy and get very good benefits back. So while protein helps you get your muscles and keep them, good carbohydrates that were listed up there help you actually train really hard. Make sense? Do you have to eat only healthy food? No. We're all human beings. It's okay to have some fun every now and again and take a piece of pizza and put a taco inside of it and squirt cheese whiz on top. Nobody with ice cream, Oreos, all that stuff, right? It's okay every now and again, but remember, you're trying to manufacture sort of the ultimate war-fighting machine. You're trying to become the best soldier you can be. So you can have a little fun, but more or less 90% of the time, you should be eating how you're supposed to. Does that make sense? What does that mean? Every other day, every third day, you can have one meal that's not particularly healthy. That's just something fun. Most of your meals should be good and should be for the purpose of enhancing your training and physique. Right? You guys have any friends that like every one of the meals, as far as you can tell, is junk food? You guys know people like that? Like breakfast was Doritos, I had a Coke for lunch, and I ate a lot of Twinkies for dinner. That is not a professional soldier's diet. That does not make you better at much of anything. Having that every now and again, totally fine. Most of the time should be healthy. Another concern is to eat for your weight. Okay? You have a combat target, a best combat target weight, where you will be the most effective soldier that you can be. It's a range, it's not one number, but if you weigh 350 pounds, do you think that you're in the best possible shape to go into combat? that maybe as a shield or like a tank door. Like, hey, the tank door got blown off. Just sit there, okay? That's not a good idea, right? On the other hand, if you weigh 80 pounds, you're an adult male and you weigh 80 pounds, are you combat effective? No, you probably can't stand up with full kit. Like, okay, here's your flak jacket, get on up. Like, I can't do it, right? Of course you can't execute any kind of maneuvers, you can't even pull up your weapon system, right? Really bad idea. So you're gonna have a target body weight, you may be a little bit away from that in one direction or another. If you're a little too light or a little too heavy, eat a little less or a little more until you're in that general area, then keep it up. Does that make sense? If you're a little heavy, eat a little less for a while, train really hard, your body weight will scoot down into that optimal range. If you have a hard time figuring out where your optimal body weight should be, your commanding officers are all very much aware of that, so feel free to talk to them about it. I can answer further questions if you want about that. Really huge point. There is no off-season in the military. There is deployment where you're asked to do things that none of us want to do, but some of us signed up and we have to do, combat. And there is other times when you're not in combat where you have one fundamental underlying goal, to become better at combat by always training physically. Does that make sense? So when we're committed to diet and training, it's a year-round venture, because when you get the call, when you're downrange taking fire, you want to be in the best possible shape you've ever been, not just in good shape. Does that make sense? Yeah, so there's no off-season, there's not a time where like, oh, for the next 5 months, I'm just not gonna do anything, right? When they call the Delta guys that show up with huge beer guts, smoking cigarettes, but hey, oh yeah, mission? Oh yeah, cool, yeah, I'm ready. Think about the cigarette. Of course not, right? They're always training when they're not deployed because they always wanna be their best. Big picture, just a couple of things for review, and then we'll go to questions. When I talk to athletes, I always like to motivate them, because some people listen to what you have to say, some people don't really care. I don't care about diet and training, I'm a good athlete already. What I tell them is, do you like winning? And they're like, do you like to lose? Okay? That motivates people plenty, because most people don't like to lose, and if you say, hey look, this stuff is going to make you win more, lose less, it's good. And that affects some people, but some people, to be honest, some athletes just don't give a shit if they all win or lose. Wow, right? Is it about winning or losing for you guys if you're in combat? No. It's about life and death. It's more than about life and death. It is not about your life and death only. It is about the life and death of the people that you are protecting back in the good US of A and all of the world that America protects. What percent of the world does the United States protect, by the way? Like the whole thing, okay? So, when we're talking about how important is it to stay physically fit and to be as physically fit as possible, it is life or death of those you love and your country and of all the things that it protects. This is a big deal. This is not, sports are for fun. Okay? When people, how many of you guys are super fans or know people that are crazy sports fans? Okay? Fundamentally, they can all step back and say this is just a game. And it is. The NFL is just a game. Right? When you see the best football player you've ever seen, that's an entertainer. Okay? Like Prince, Michael Jackson, best football player you've ever seen. Same idea. No joke. Right? Their job is to entertain. Okay? Your job is not to entertain. Your job is to protect freedom across the world. That's a really big deal. Do you have a choice as to whether or not to be in shape? Yes. You better make the right choice and be in as good of shape as you can. You have a lot of responsibility. There are a couple of reasons for defeat in a combat situation which are more or less acceptable, or at least understandable. Okay? Your enemy outclasses you. They're just better fighters than you are. Okay, you lost. Right? You ran out of ammo or supplies. Okay, we don't have any food left. We're just doing this with our triggers and nothing's coming out. Okay? Fine reason for defeat. Here's an unacceptable reason for defeat. That you were physically out of shape and could not carry out your tasks, yet you had years to improve upon your physical shape. How many of you guys have years for sure left until you ever possibly see combat from now? Everyone in this room. How long of a time we have, what a luxury we have to get in as good of shape as we possibly can. So when that time comes that some of us are going to be in combat, we can look back and say, I'm so glad I trained to my fullest and ate really well, so now I can be the best soldier I can be. Can you imagine getting into combat and being like, I'm completely out of shape? Is that a good situation to be in? No way, that's a nightmare situation. Couple of good tips for you guys just to close out this talk. Number one, listen to your commanding officers. They know what they're talking about. That's their job. And they're going to reinforce a lot of the things I said today. Work hard, for sure, in your training and everything else, but work smart. Don't do stupid things. Don't push yourself more than your body can tolerate. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the Q&A just a tad. Work hard and smart at the same time. Be consistent and start right now building the war machine. Start right now to become the best soldier that you could possibly be from, of course, a mental perspective and a skills perspective, but also from a physical perspective. So when the time comes that you are in combat, you can rely on an incredible physique that you've built to do as good of a job as it possibly can. War, there's one certainty, it sucks, okay? It absolutely sucks. Of all the reasons it's gonna suck, at least maybe it could not suck in the physical way. That makes sense? You could be taking fire, you could be in a crappy situation, but you're breathing clean and free, and you know you've got tons of endurance and strength and power left. Or you could be in the same situation and be huffing and puffing and be like, man, I really wish I had trained. And somebody's gonna say, well, you didn't have much time. You're like, I had 4 years to train. I have no excuse. Not a good situation. Make sense?